What is going on, and welcome to another video in Finding Freedom. Now, hopefully this reaches some of you, but if some of you are muggles out there, you might actually learn something, especially if you're in the realm of advertising, marketing, business, etc., or you're into things like psychology. Now, I know the thumbnail reads spell work for the unimpressed, but what is a spell? Is that an affirmation? Is that something that you say over and over again, like a chant? Is that something that puts somebody underneath hypnosis? I mean, all these things can be referred to as a spell because it's a synonym of the word. It's just something that your brain is able to register. If I told you and prompted you, like AI, that somebody was bipolar manic or bipolar depressed or ADHD or narcissistic, and didn't really show any actual evidence that wasn't falsified, but actual proof, then you would be better inclined to either ask questions or study up on the subject before somebody just throws a word out there that triggers your mammalian brain, right? Your lizard brain, your animalistic brain, right? If I drop the N-word, how many of you African Americans would get upset because the N-word, the one that is not liked in the South but accepted in the North and anywhere else that's a big city, so on and so forth, because it's a form of saying what's up, versus somewhere else where it's taken as a derogatory thing, right? So you have to understand these things in order to understand not just life, culture, but the area in which that you reside, right? If I say, oh, we call the people that we normally say the N-word to, we call them Canadians instead, right? And now, because they know the word Canadian is referring to them and they don't know any better, when you say the word Canadian, you get away with saying something like, oh, bless your heart, when in actuality, you just mean F you, right? Because that's what oh, bless your heart means. Might as well just be direct instead of using wordplay. So let's get into spell work for the unimpressed, or those that say this is old, or I know this already, or yada yada, right? Now, if you haven't seen class, please, by all means, go see class. It is my philosophical online lecture of a way of doing, or should I say, a way of thinking better. Maybe one day I'll turn it into a book, but for now, it's on YouTube for you guys to enjoy, and we're in the continuing education portion, so on and so forth. So let's continue. That was a quick shout out there, but I got my little grimoire. Oh, sorry, a book, right? A notebook. This might be also known as a journal, or if you have feminine energy, a diary. So don't get misconstrued with the language, because people like to play with words because they know psychologically, especially if they have a psychology degree, how to manipulate that. In magic, it's called mentalism, right? So let's get into it, shall we? So, understand there is a difference between affirmations and cursing oneself, right? Now, when they say stuff like, oh, well, you should not take God's name in vain. Does that mean you should not, say anything bad about it? You should not say anything bad. But if God's in everyone, then should you not talk badly about yourself, about others? So on and so forth, right? I saw this cool round table on Diary of a CEO led by a male. So if he has a diary, I don't know if you're going to think of him as gay for having a diary, right? But he was leading this round table, and there was a couple people there. Andrew Bustamante was one of them. This awesome lady who does a lot of books and, investigating on stuff is in there as well. And I love her. She kind of has this like Esther Perel vibe to her. And she looks at Andrew at one point in the video and she goes, I'm closer to you than the blood in your veins, right? Which was a little cryptic, but it was very true, right? But let's get into this first point, right? Because what is it? What is an affirmation? Something you repeat over and over again, right? If you listen to Tony Robbins or any of these motivational speakers, they talk about saying these things out loud to yourself or in private. I'm great. Today I'm going to do this. Today I'm going to be on top of the world. Today I feel amazing, etc. But if you wake up and state, oh, today I feel like crap, and you say it over and over again, just like in business within marketing and advertising, and how the same advertisements come up over and over again to plant that seed, well, when you affirm, right? Or you do affirmations, or you talk poorly about others or yourself, over and over again using the same terminology, vernacular, rhetoric, well, you're just not only planting the seed, you are watering it as well. And, this is something that a lot of people do not understand because they don't go in depth in things like this, right? But marketers and advertisers, you little spell workers out there, they put the advertisements in front of you, right? They water the seed over and over again by showing you the same advertisement over and over again, or a similar advertisement with different individuals or different wording based upon frequency, etc., right? To move you down the funnel. When it comes to cursing oneself, if you hear stuff like red pill, blue pill, black pill, white pill, green pill, etc., then what do they mean exactly, right? And then of course, if you're stuck on stupid, right? What is it? Stuck on stupid, right? So if you don't pay attention into the science portion of class or the spirituality portion of class or the continuing education portion of class, one, you probably won't understand a lot of the stuff in this video unless you had, went to the library, read books other than a curriculum, or, investigated for yourself. Excuse me. So how many of you have said or stated something out loud and then all of a sudden it appears on your phone as an advertisement or something else, and you start getting it over and over again, and then eventually you spend the money, right? Well, the same concept occurs, right? If you state something poorly, if you talk poorly about yourself, all of a sudden you start getting other messages. If you call the Veteran Affairs office, the first thing they're going to hit you with is the 988 number. If you're thinking about suicide, blah, 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 right? Because the media portrays veterans as being crazy because they're broke. Here's a little fun fact that I learned about vocabulary, vernacular, and the way you address certain individuals, especially coming from over a decade in marketing, more than 2 decades in magic, playing chess, and so on and so forth, right? If someone doesn't have a lot of money and they're broke, whether it be intentionally or by other people's doing, coercive behavior, whatever the case, and they're not, wealthy, rich, etc., then you refer to them as crazy, and you could get away with it because of, the psychological engineering and the social engineering that occurs in the mind of the spectator. Think of it like a magic trick. If a doctor deems someone crazy, or gives them a mental health label, and then they force that person into that position, right? Whether that be restricting their jobs, right? Whatever job they're able to apply to, they're not able to get a job because somebody tampered with something. They were playing with the craft, right? And if you haven't seen the movie The Craft, Nosy Nancy ends up in a psych ward because she tried to mess with Sarah. I'll call myself Sarah from this point, or refer to myself as such, because she was also in the TV show The Mentalist with Patrick Jane, who was, a mentalist. And she was also a police officer that, stuck it to everyone. And Nosy Nancy, we could call her Debbie or whatever the case may be, can, be admitted to the psych ward for things that she tried to do, and those that decided to, work with her. Remember in the movie The Craft, she not only ended up in a psych ward, but the other people that decided to assist her, the other two, right, lost their ability, lost their powers, right? And then when they were asking Sarah what happened, I suggest you go watch that video. Now, although it may be fictitious, I have no affiliation with Practical Magic 2, the movie that's coming out, but I do love the two actresses that are in it, and they are amazing, such as Sandra Bullock and the other. But let's get back into it, right? Because what about cursing? Oh, I don't like this person. And then you go around saying it over and over again. If you don't understand 6 degrees of separation, which is a theory, not only in sociology, but psychology, well, then you're going to be hindered, because within a group of 6 people, if you were to discuss someone that lives in the same vicinity, a similar vicinity, within about, let's say, 20 to 30 miles, give or take, eventually one of those people, or 9 times out of 10, one of those people know whom you're referring to, and they can relay the message, right? Similar concept, right? If I'm sitting in my car recording this video and we were to look around my car, right? Sorry, I just got back from the gym, so you might see my martial arts gloves there. But we were to look around, look around, look around, look around, etc. And I were to ask you now, where are the pinhole cameras? Where's the hidden audio? Where's everything else? Or are they on the phone, right? Were you looking for that? Probably not, right? Now, if I prompted you to look for that, like I pointed out my gloves, etc., then it would stand out. Outside of it, it's called intentional blindness, right? Tony Robbins discusses this when he talks about the salt. Oh, can you go to the kitchen and grab the salt? Oh, I can't see the salt. Where's the salt? Where's the salt? I don't know where the salt is, so on and so forth, etc. And then somebody stands up and says it's right here in front of your face, right? Intentional blindness. Same thing happens with cursing. Similar things happen with affirmations, right? Because you have to confirm what it is that you are trying to affirm, right? So if you're waking up and saying, I'm going to be great, I'm going to be great, I'm going to be great, this is my day, I'm going to make a lot of money, etc., then you stub your toe into the wall, right? Your pinky toe. You ever cracked your pinky toe into the corner of a wall and it hurts, and for some reason that negative energy carries out throughout the rest of the day? Similar concept. Now, let's move into point number 2 here. And there's 7 in this video, so I hope you guys stick with me. If you're getting anything out of this, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to follow me. And I don't know how much time I have in North Carolina or in the United States. I'm trying to make my escape, but they're keeping me hostage here to treat me as their science project, I guess, for a either psychological study, mental health study, or medicinal study. I have no idea, but it got very interesting once I started going to authorities and things like that. People started backing out or getting upset, etc. But the first thing you know is never betray rule 1, which is dime somebody out for something you have no knowledge of, and then making assumptions, right? And then, of course, betraying family, right? The moment you do that, are they still family? Who knows? Now, let's continue. Marketing is magic in the context of business, right? Prosecution is cursing in the legal context. So I'll state that again. Within business, marketing is the magic of business. It's what makes money. It's what convinces people that you should get this Android S26 or S25 over the iPhone. Or it's the marketing that convinces you to, go to Carowinds because it's closer, cheaper, etc., than to go to Disney and see everything there, right? It's marketing that gets you to take an action psychologically, right? But it also speaks to the masses because of, the sociological aspect of it. Let's do a mic check. We're still good. And what do I mean by sociology? Well, if you deal with social workers, so on and so forth, if you know somebody named Danielle or whatever, they know about social work and working with groups of people, right? Sociology, right? That's what that is, the study of the masses, of the people that matter. That's why you go to mass, because you matter, right? And then, of course, when somebody prosecutes you in the context of the law, they're cursing you. This person did this crime. They violated Title 18, right, underneath the USC. Well, what's funny is that 18 is a part of the 9 multiplication table. Has nothing to do with you, but if the gentleman that taught me this trick, a very genius-like of a man, most people wouldn't see that or see as such or recognize as such, because they probably are stuck on stupid and focused on paper and credentials. But remember, the same piece of paper or a similar piece of paper that takes you time to get to either save lives or mess with them, like a doctor, so on and so forth, or a lawyer, is similar to a driver's license, right? The medical degree gives you the ability to control and play with life just like a driver's license can if you do not know how to drive, right? And if you think a piece of paper makes you smart or intelligent, then you must think everybody with a driver's license can drive as well. Think about it, right? So if marketing is the magic of a business that brings money in, then what is finance? Finance manages it, right? Sales answers objections. Then you have operations, handles the distribution and allocations of everything. You have technology and security, which also fortifies and protects it. And then you have the legal standing, right? So what is a prosecution, right? somebody that's impeding on what it is that you're stating, somebody that is disagreeing with you, somebody that does not like you, somebody that's probably demented. We'll call them dementors. We could use the Patronus charm. That's a little play on words if you like Harry Potter. But if someone's demented and narcissistic and they like pulling off psychological abuses over and over again, and they just think it's fun and a game because it helps them, I don't know, give them a sense of power, right, over people, right? I know some people, and I've seen this more so with females than males because, let's just face it, males aren't that intelligent when it comes to manipulation of emotions because they're not built for the emotional spectrum as well as females, or should I say those with feminine energy, because I've seen homosexual males, what's it called, get away with this as well, but the more masculine side is not the greatest at this, right? So when they want to manipulate the emotions, right, or how would I put this, if these two things were a lightsaber, right, so you have the green lightsaber and a blue lightsaber, you know about the red lightsaber, and you would have to bleed a kyber crystal. Well, bleeding a kyber crystal, if you watch or read the books of Star Wars, was the energy source for the lightsaber. Now, if you were to look at your heart as the kyber crystal, right, if I wanted to turn you into somebody that hated the world, first I would have to make you really sad and depressed, right? Give you a bleeding heart, like bleeding a kyber crystal, right? Or bleeding the pineal gland, right? We could use that as well because that resides within the brain, right? Creates thought, etc., in your perception and understanding of the world based upon how multiple people interact with you from a sociological perspective all the way down to a psychological perspective on a individualistic portion and a group mindset portion. Right? So remember this, because when you go to court, right, and you're being prosecuted, are you being viewed at by a jury, right? Because now you have to deal with the sociological aspect, not just the triangle effect of the prosecutor, defendant, and the judge, right? That's a nice little triangle for you right there. If you have the jury, well, then that's a box formation, and then you have people that come up, and then you have the 5 points of contact after that, right? Because you have to call up witnesses if you're going to present also in front of a jury. So you have the jury, that's 1. You have the judge, that's 2. You have the prosecutor, that's 3. The defendant, that's 4. And then those that you interrogate on the stand, that would be 5 points of contact. If you have a badge with 5 points on it, it makes sense now, right? Because after you apprehend somebody and you throw cuffs on them, depending on your level, right? Because if you carry a shield, it doesn't have 5 points on it, right? That's police. But if you're a sheriff or in another branch of service, you have 5 points. 9 times out of 10, those cases might be in front of a jury. So you have the plaintiff, defendant, the judge, the jury, and the people or witnesses that come up and sit on the stand one at a time. And that's your 5 points of contact, right? The hidden hand, as they would say. So let's continue. So acronyms put the brain into a lock if it does not know what it means, right? It's kind of like a mental block, right? That can be hacked depending on who's doing the hacking, right? So if I said the word CIA, DIA, USMC, NSA, JMR, so on and so forth, right? What do all those things mean? Does that mean Christians in America? Does that mean children in America? Does that mean Central Intelligence Agency? Does that mean devils in America for the DIA, etc.? Does that mean demented in America? Does that mean daughters in America? You know, what does that portion mean? NASA or NSA, right? National Service Agency, National Security Agency, new students attending, etc., right? Or what about NASA, NASA, right? What would that be, right? So that'll be a new academic study at the academy, give or take, because initialisms don't normally show up, right? So you have to understand these things, right? Because if I were to say FBI and somebody's like, oh, well, initialisms always show up. Well, if you were to take the acronym FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, there's no O in there, is there? That's an initialism. With an English class, you should have learned this, children. Don't mean to speak in a certain vernacular or rhetoric to you. I was trying to use what you would deem as taboo language, which was dictated by Sigmund Freud within psychology, to trigger an emotional response so that you're able to retain this and I get your attention and you pay attention. So when I stated children, you probably got emotionally triggered and you clicked up, meaning, using my slang, your eyes and your head moved and jerked up and you started to pay attention to the video because of the way I addressed the situation, the way I said something. How many of you have heard it's not what you said, but how you said it, right? And this is true to a certain extent, but people are always looking for excuses to make themselves feel better, right? Now, in the beginning of this, I also talked about the Bible. I mentioned certain things, right? But remember, and there's a portion in there that the downfall of humanity will come when it's all about me, right? How many of you are into music? Me. Look at me. Listen to me. Do what I want you to do because it pleases me. I want to say you have a mental health disorder and treat you like crap and put you in a bad position because misery loves company and I need you to be there with me. I want to take a selfie with you and me so I can put it on my social media so I can make money. Think about it. Now, can it be hacked? Possibly. Who knows, right? I mean, hell, the military uses acronyms all the time. And for those of you who don't know by now, I'm former military and we love acronyms and it keeps things simple as long as you know what the acronym means, right? If something was called a MAF instead of a MEF, right? Marine Amphibious Force, right? MAF, then what's a MEF? Marine Expeditionary Force. Well, what's the difference? Well, look into it. Look it up. Right? I mean, hell, if you are confused or you don't understand the rhetoric, vernacular, or the explanations when I'm talking about spelling for the unimpressed and the 5 points of contact, what's the point of a pentagram? Which is a 5-pointed star, is it not? What's the point of the pentagon? Which is, if you are able to draw it out from a top-down point of view, you can make a pentagram symbol from it, could you not? Think about it, right? When they say the heart of America, figure it out or look at the state. Why is it in the center? And then draw your lines the way you want to and see that it's in the center of a pentagram. Let's continue. Point number 4. People only know what they are taught or informed of. So if somebody is informed or told that somebody has a mental health disorder and they like abuse, they like abusing people, etc., and they get off on it because it's a sadistic behavioral pattern, right? They're not about positivity. They may state that they're about positivity, but really they like being mischievous, right? But mischievous in a bad way. Remember, there is a fine line when you're utilizing deception as a tool of yours, right? And this falls, and what I'm speaking about falls within deception. I'm teaching you deception, right? Because if somebody's not informed, remember, Canadians, that can also be African Americans, otherwise known as the N-word, so on and so forth, can be taken derogatory or not, right? Then you are clueless. And if you are clueless, then you're going to go around stating a bunch of stuff, right? You remember how, not Cardi B, Lotto, she talks about monkey see, monkey do. Why? Because when the monkey sees what's on TV, they do it in the street. When the DJ plays the music, people do it on the dance floor, etc. You're going into a hypnotic state. You're going into a trance. You're going into a spell, if that makes sense, right? You don't believe me? Play the electric slide at a party. See what happens, right? Watch how the people take instruction. Play that, what's that song? Back that ass up. Wanna go down there. And watch people react and conduct themselves the same way they do in a music video. Watch let's see here, a movie or whatever on other things, and then watch how it plays out in the world, right? You have to remember something. And I knew this when I had my magic business at the age of 16, 17 years old. It was on my business card. Things are not always as they seem. Remember that. So if you only know what you're told or taught, and let's say you have sadistic or narcissistic, or let's just, if we want to use other terminology, you're a little demon out there, right? Being controlled by a devil, right? Because that would be your handler. And then the demons would be whoever the assets of the handler are, if you want to use that lingo, because we're playing with words, right? It's wordplay, it's synonyms, right? Are they doing a bad thing? Are they doing a good thing? Because if they were doing a good thing, then instead of a devil, you can have an angel or an archangel, and then your demon would be your angels, right? So on and so forth. And then the archangel would handle the angels below, and then the devil will handle the demons below, so on and so forth, and use them like chess pieces on a chessboard, right? Because you have a light and dark side, right? Just like a chessboard, or in a courtroom where the judge presiding over the case would come out in black and white, or a priest, or a referee, so on and so forth. Pay attention to exactly what I'm saying before you make judgments. Do your research to understand and then get back to me. I had a friend that wanted to interject or leave a quote or whatever on one of my Instagram things. And I literally was like, you know what? We can move at my speed now. Went to ChatGPT, posted something in there about history, etc. Took because he was being sarcastic. He's like, oh, what? Being on welfare and minimum wage or whatever? I was like, no, you dumbass. This has been going on since emancipation, right? So I went and took a screenshot, sent it to him, and then all of a sudden he how do I state this? Reworded his whole thing, right? Because somebody didn't pay attention, I guess, in humanities or history class. Love them, but some people are too quick at the tongue without doing their research or coming forth with wisdom and applied knowledge, right? Now, moving on to number 5, choose your medium. If you're going to get into business, if you're going to get into the, as I would say, spell work or whatever, to make yourself known, right? What are you going to be known for? And then pick your medium. What do I mean by medium? I'm not talking about woo-woo medium. A medium would be if you're a writer, go work for a newspaper or magazine or someplace where you can write blogs, right? That's a form of medium, right? Go ahead and get into speaking or the art of storytelling, right? Present on stage, become a public speaker. That's a different medium, right? That's a different area if you need an analogy or a synonym. Or if you're good with design or psychology or being social, choose your medium and then go down that path to see if not only is it for you, but is it a good way for you to reach the masses, right? Because those who you're trying to reach, right, at a grand scale matter to yourself. And if they matter to you, then you might as well reach out to the masses with advertising dollars to target people that are interested in what you're saying. And you can do this based upon keywords. Remember, the brain acts like a computer and it's prompted like AI. So if I were to say the N word a certain way, it would trigger you. If I were to say the C word, not cookie, but cracker or wetback or whatever the case, not trying to offend anybody, but because people are already groomed and socially engineered to take those words as such and look at them a certain way, well then your brain can do the same thing when you're doing your targeting for your Google search, right? That's your PPC, right? I told you I had a decade in this, more than that, give or take. And then of course, if you want to tell a story with it, well, can you put a video together? Can you mess with AI, right? Can you tell a story? Will you buy whatever it is that they're saying, and does it check out, right? Because people are really good and have a silver tongue and are real good with lip service, but then somebody somehow, somewhere down the line, somebody gets screwed over because of one or two things. One, somebody used the skill of deception, and there's always a group of people that practice deception almost every single day that hold the line. between influence and manipulation, right? So there's deception, the D in the middle, right? And then you have manipulation, right? Something bad or in it for oneself. Influence, right? Influence, right? Not influenza, but to get you to do something, right? Etc. On the good side, give or take, if that's the vernacular, if that's the English that you understand. Remember, the word color is spelled with a U in the UK and without one in the United States. Decision is also spelt with a C in certain areas instead of the S and C, so on and so forth. Understand where you are so you know how to speak to the individuals you are trying to reach that matter to you. Now, moving on to the last 2 points, starting with the second to last. Magic is real, but has different ways to refer to it, right? Now, some people will be like, oh, this woo-woo stuff, he's talking about magic and everything else, so on and so forth. But if I were to talk about magic and you were to see something that looked like, that utilized science or physics, where I were to put you in a room and all of a sudden you were to hear something, let me do a quick mic check, we're good, and you were to hear something, how do you know I'm not applying physics to that, right? If you watch Batman, you have applied sciences. So if sound can travel with light and you cannot see the laser beam, and I put you in a room and I hit a target on the wall that's connected to speakers that are hidden, and now you start hearing someone's voice because, well, the light was able to transfer sound, and light moves faster than sound, so it's efficient, right, for the transfer of data, information, sound waves, etc., on a beam of light, right, to another location, to then now transmit that audio to that facility. Would you deem yourself as crazy, as schizophrenic, as having a hallucination, as AI says, right? Or are you really that? You have to, well, determine. You have to backtrack. You have to look at certain things, you know? I had people that would get upset because I called out all their BS, and they were like, you should teach us how to catch people like you. Why? Why are you trying to catch people like me? Are they actually doing something bad, or you just don't like what they're doing? So you can have more control and power over individuals, because that's what it comes down to in a PC world that's trying to maintain peace with the core, right? But if you cannot maintain peace, well, then you're going to have to meet other individuals that help sit on that line, that say, hey, you're not actually being peaceful. You're treating people like crap, this, that, and the third. And then all of a sudden they start speaking, and because you don't like how the master of ceremonies, which is an MC, somebody with a microphone, somebody able to utilize their First Amendment right, unless there's no such thing as that, then I guess we don't have human rights, civil rights, and everything else, and we could have a free-for-all, but I guarantee that somebody will flip out if they heard that. Well, then you have to understand what's being said, right? What's being done, what's being shown, right? You have to understand science, right, before you start making judgments, right? Because if I were to do a magic trick, right, let's say if I were to do a magic trick and use that wordplay and show you an ace, right? Here, I'll hold it this way. And I know you saw the other side, it really doesn't matter. But this is for the context of everything, right? So if I were to show you like this, right? And then I were to shake it, so on and so forth, etc. And now it changes to the King of Spades, right? What would you say after that? What would you do after that? Would you be in shock, right? Or better yet, let me show you another one, right? Let me do this one a little bit quicker. So I were to show you the ace, and then if I were to do a snap change, and this were to come down and then land in front, and it were to change immediately in front of your face, right? Just like that. Would it look magical? Would you be paying attention to the other things? Remember, I showed you my whole car. Would you see that there's 2 fingers here, right? And in a snapping action, just like in Avengers, when they snapped the fingers, right, before they called Captain Marvel to come and help because she's a badass, little did you know there was also a male figure, but it was different, and they wanted to introduce females, and there's females in the Marine Corps, there's males in the Marine Corps, as well as other branches of service. Both have masculine and feminine energy, Some are more masculine than others. Now, would you be paying attention to the second finger that moves? Now there's only one. But what were you fixated on? Were you fixated on the sound, the change in the image, so on and so forth, etc., right? And now if I have a deck of playing cards in my hand, right, without displaying the other side, I were to do this for you. Let me hold this in a gambler's cop type of situation, right? Do this, right? And then I were to come up and then show you, well, I deposited the other card here, so now that's ditched and gone. Now you're left with this, and I can hand this out, right? That leaves my bases covered, right? If I were to do the ambitious card trick, right? Or I wanted to use sign language, and I was sitting in front of a camera because I knew I was being watched, and I had an attorney in the room, and I did this little type of flourish, and they just happened to be a magician. Well, that flourish is called "What the hell happened to Sybil," right? Sybil, right? Spell it, right? Because it's either Sybil or civil. Or, and I could say, well, what happened to, I don't know, rights? Do those not exist? Or are they referring to something else, right? Because Sybil spelled with an S refers to the psychological studying of Sybil, right? A mental health patient or disorder or whatever the case may be. But if I enunciate it and pronunciate it civil, or do it and then say rights at the end because you're listening for the whole thing to understand instead of a key word, right? Then you're able to decipher the difference. If you're speaking Latin or Spanish or French or whatever, if it ends in an A, it's feminine. If it ends in an O, it's masculine. It's very precise. This is why when I told people, if you want to get away with saying the N word, drop the hard ER, right? Because if you have the hard ER, you end up in the ER, aka the emergency room, right? If it has an A, then you're all right. Hey, hey, you hear the slight tweak in there, right? And then, of course, if health care, right? Heal them space care, right? Then where is the EM? Well, that's the emergency room. That's where they do the healing. They took those two letters and put it where it actually matters in the first two as the first two letters in emergency, right? So heal them, EM, space, if you want to look up if that's space, and care, right? Right? So health care. What is it? HEALTHEM space care. Unless it's written as one word, but so on and so forth. Is that an acronym or is that a hidden subtlety, right? Or psychological subtlety? And you could understand that if you read or understand Banachek and study his work as a magician within mentalism. Or Darren Brown when it comes to subliminal advertising, right? They used to do it in the music industry. They're now testing it on YouTube where they play low audio low audio or commands or words under audio that's already playing. So if you were watching this video and then somebody were to play a lower thing, so such as, let's say you have music going loud and somebody's standing next to you either whispering or saying something not at the same altitude or the same volume and pitch and tone, your brain will register it and you may carry out actions later based upon it. And it's how hypnosis can sometimes work in a subtle manner. And it was also deemed illegal in the advertising space because it was so effective. This is how they also implicated it into things like MK Ultra or any other psychological things that you've heard out there. Last point before we wrap this up. Your enemy and those that want to do wrong will do anything to obtain knowledge like this. Now, what do I mean? When it comes to stuff, right? One of the things that are most guarded, and if you can actually understand this, if you saw the movie The Librarian, right? The thing that the librarians guarded the most, and others that have seen it will understand it because in the second movie, there's a Freemason in there, right? And they show that Flynn has this amulet from his father, and his father was a Mason, right? And he says, you have an amulet, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I'm supposed to serve you, etc., blah, 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 till death. And Flynn just happens to be the librarian. Now, the librarians protect knowledge, right? They protect wisdom. They protect the books. They protect all the things that you've heard in lore in a certain environment. And then there's something called the Serpent Brotherhood, those that like to play scientists, those that discovered it, found it, right? So let's say the Asclepius and the Catechus, right? The symbol for the ambulance, the symbol for the hospital. Not to say they're a bad thing, but they're on the logical side until they see something that is either illogical or something that can give them more power over the populace, right? Remember, in Avengers, Doctor Strange never told Tony Stark that he had to sacrifice himself for everybody. He just said that there was one option out of like 14 million, right? 1 in 4. And then after Tony took it upon himself, because somebody was part of the Serpent Brotherhood within S.H.I.E.L.D., who had a falcon-like symbol, don't be a blue falcon, go look up that terminology, aka a buddy effer, right, for your own personal gain and whim. But Tony took it upon himself, and I don't know if Nick Fury in there, now we have Operation Fury, that's a whole other thing, waited till after half the population disappeared to call Captain Marvel to help, and like, oh, we have an emergency, right? But why wasn't it called upon sooner? My ideology around that whole understanding is he might have wanted to see if the Avengers would actually do anything or be able to withstand everything and, you know, defend everything as possible. And possibly if somebody would do the right thing and take it upon themselves. Or why didn't Doctor Strange state the thing that he saw unless the person who could see the future that they were protecting couldn't see that far, or decided to be like, mum's the word, I don't want to say anything because he might kill us, etc., right? So think about it, right? If in the Librarian, the Serpent Brotherhood was after things like the Spear of Destiny, the other objects, right? The Temple of Solomon, right? To learn the Song of Solomon, which would open everything else, right? Or what about the Judas Chalice, right? The 13 pieces of silver that were melted down into a chalice, etc., and created whatever. This is in the lore of the third movie of the Librarians, right? You have to understand that, but then take things out into the real world. How is there a Freemason in the second one? Why is Gabrielle Anwar, who was in the movie Ascent of a Woman, most beautiful woman ever, that woman is so gorgeous. There's another lady on social media now that kind of reminds me of her as far as loosely based upon looks. I think her name is Emily. Awesome. Sorry for that. The phone overheated because it was sitting in the sun. Long story short, I'm going to combine these, so if you saw the split, I'm sorry. But yeah, Emily, she's an influencer. She kind of reminds me of Gabrielle Anwar, but Gabrielle Anwar was in the second Librarian movie, right? She was also in Burn Notice, Ascent of a Woman, and a couple other pictures as well. Now, why is that? How do you put the puzzle pieces together then, right? So go ahead. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, this lesson, I guess. And tell me your thoughts. Leave them down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video on Finding Freedom. And if you guys aren't in Alpha Gents, go ahead and start signing up. It's going to launch this week. I think the channel is up already, so all you guys got to do is join. Talk to you guys later. Peace.